Alright, let's talk about one of Celtic's newest signings who's quietly arrived, but might just be a name we'll be talking about a lot this season, Sebastian Tani. Signed for around £5 million, the deal didn't make massive headlines, especially with all the other noise around Celtic during the window. But there's a good reason to believe this could be one of the smartest moves of the summer. So who exactly is Tani? He's a bit of a footballing enigma if you're not clued into Scandinavian football. Born in Norway, with international ties to Chazia, and most of his career played in his homeland before a recent stint in Sweden, he's the kind of player that doesn't show up in your timeline unless you're seriously tracking Nordic football. That's exactly why we turned to Anders Lindberg, a stats editor and analyst with deep eyes on the region, to get a better picture of who Tani is and what he could bring to Celtic. Now let's be honest, when a player arrives after only 6 months at a club, it usually raises eyebrows. That's exactly what happened with Hammarby fans when Tani left so soon. He had just joined the Swedish side in February, made an instant impact, and by the time summer came around, Celtic swooped in and snapped him up. That sort of rapid rise suggests a player that's not just performing well, but performing above expectations. Anders described him as someone he had been watching well before he even moved to Sweden. His job, covering Nordic leagues and scouting talent for the Stockholm football scene, meant he'd already clocked Tani back when he was playing in a relegation-threatened side in Norway. Despite the team's struggles, Tani stood out. He was that player who looked like he belonged at a higher level, and once he made the move to Hammarby, he proved it almost immediately. In his very first match for the Swedish club, he scored in the cup. From there, he became a regular starter and one of the team's key creative threats. What's most striking isn't just his talent, it's how quickly he adapted to each new level. From a bottom-tier side in Norway, to a top-of-the-table team in Sweden, to now joining a massive club like Celtic, every step, he's taken with confidence. So what kind of player is Sebastian Tani? This is where it gets exciting. According to the data and the eye test, he's electric. Fast, fearless, and always looking to drive at defenders. He's not just a winger who hugs the touchline. He wants the ball, wants to beat his man, and wants to create chances. Think of a player who leads the stats in both successful dribbles and progressive runs. That's not just flair, that's impact. Most of his work happens down the left-hand side, cutting in or bursting towards the box, often dragging 2 or 3 defenders with him. He's the kind of wide player that causes panic. He may not have the most clinical numbers in terms of goals yet, but there's a catch. In Sweden, a lot of the chances he created weren't finished by his teammates, so the assist numbers don't tell the whole story. Watch the games, and you see a guy creating danger consistently. That's not to say he's without areas to improve. One of the main talking points from his time at Hammarby is the feeling that he could be a bit more ruthless in front of goal. He scored a few, sure, including a penalty, but many believe he has the quality to notch more if he starts backing himself more inside the box. Sometimes he gets into great positions, creates the space, and then opts to pass or sees the final moment fizzle out. But at 23 years old, that kind of decision-making can still be sharpened. The tools are there. The ceiling is high. And there's more to like. Anders described him as incredibly resilient. Despite being a marked man in Sweden, targeted by physical defenders, and often kicked around the pitch, he never lost his cool. Never got dragged into nonsense. Just picked himself up and went again. That kind of mentality could serve him well in the Scottish Premiership, where we all know flair players need a bit of toughness to survive week in, week out. Off the pitch, he's described as humble and grounded. In one of his first interviews, he even said he wanted to be a showman. Someone who gets kids excited to watch football. You can't help but love that attitude. He's not caught up in tactical jargon or overthinking the game. He just wants to express himself, bring joy to the pitch, and entertain. If that doesn't sound like someone who can capture the hearts of Celtic Park, I don't know what does. In terms of where he fits in, he's definitely a left winger. That's where he's played in Norway and Sweden, and that's where he's shown his best. There's been some talk among fans about possibly playing him on the right, but according to those who've watched him closely, it's not really his natural side. He can try it, sure, but if you want him firing on all cylinders, you want him on the left. That's where he's dangerous, that's where he's confident, and that's where he's plug-and-play ready for Celtic. Now let's talk timing. Because the Swedish league runs on a calendar year schedule, Tani has already played over 20 games this season. That means he's match fit, not just ticking over in training, but truly match sharp. He's also been with the Tunisian national team, keeping himself active and competitive. So in theory, if Celtic needed him to come on this weekend for 20 or 30 minutes, he's ready. Match ready. The only concern would be longer term. How do you manage his fitness so that he doesn't burn out in the final months of the Scottish season, given he's been going since January? Anders noted that Hammarby had to manage that themselves. There was a point where he dipped slightly, just a bit of fatigue creeping in, and they gave him a week or two to reset. When he came back, he was firing again. So Celtic will need to be clever with their rotation, maybe give him a breather in October or November, just to keep him fresh for the run-in. But that's a good problem to have. You'd rather have a player who's hungry and in rhythm than one who needs weeks to get up to speed. It's also worth mentioning how rare it is for a Swedish club to sell a player so quickly after signing him. Usually, clubs like Hammarby plan around these players for at least a season or two. But the fact that they were willing to let him go so soon, even when they didn't want to, shows just how big Celtic's offer was, both financially and in terms of opportunity for the player. Hammarby were chasing the title, and still, they let him go. That says a lot. This move might remind some fans of Hoda, not just because of the position, but because of that swagger, that confidence, that spark. Tani isn't a copy of Hoda, but if you've been missing that kind of creative energy on the left side, this is the kind of player who could light it up. Anders even said the comparison wasn't too far off, both in terms of attitude and style. And don't forget, he's got ambition. When Hammarby signed him, he already had offers from the Netherlands and elsewhere in Europe. He was ready to make that leap abroad. This is a player who sees Celtic not as a destination, but a platform. That might sound scary to some fans, but actually, it's a good thing. You want players who arrive hungry, with something to prove, and with eyes on bigger stages. That's when they play their best football. Now, let's dig even deeper into what makes Sebastian Tani such an intriguing prospect for Celtic. Not just the flair and excitement, but the full picture of the player, the personality, and how he could impact the structure of this team moving forward. While his stats don't scream goal machine, his overall influence on games is where the real value lies. Anders, who's watched him more closely than just about anyone outside his own coaching staff, made it clear Tani might not finish off every move, but more often than not, he's the one creating it. Whether it's a deflected shot falling kindly to a teammate, a clever run that opens up space, or simply occupying multiple defenders and freeing up others, his fingerprints are all over attacking phases. That sort of contribution doesn't always show up in your standard stat sheet, but it makes a huge difference over 90 minutes. There's a growing awareness now in football that the final stat, a goal or assist, is often the product of a chain of good decisions and dangerous moments. Tani thrives in that build-up chaos. He's the type of player who might beat two men on the wing, cut inside, and thread a low ball into the box. And even if it's cleared, suddenly you're pinning the opposition back. Corners follow, pressure builds. He creates waves of danger. And that, for a Celtic side that's struggled at times to break down low blocks or force teams out of their shape, could be invaluable. And what's interesting is that he doesn't just bring that creativity from the byline. He's more dynamic than that. He's not a traditional winger who's predictable, hug the touchline, cut back, swing and across. No, Tani drifts. He invades the half spaces. He'll drag defenders inside, and then burst past them with one touch. In Sweden, defenders didn't know whether to follow him inside or stick wide, and most of the time, either decision was wrong. That kind of unpredictability is exactly what you want in a team trying to unlock packed defenses. Now, of course, the Scottish Premiership is a different beast. It's physical, fast, and relentless. But again, this is where Tani's background might serve him well. He's not some lightweight flair player who's never had a scrap for a win. He came up in tough Norwegian sides battling relegation, then went to Sweden where he was targeted because of his style. And still, he stood out. Still, he didn't back down. That suggests he's not just got flair, he's got steel. Another point that shouldn't be underestimated is just how well he's handled transitions. Players often struggle when they move clubs, especially across leagues and countries. There's always talk about adaptation periods, settling in, needing months to adjust. Not Tani. Anders made it clear. Every time he's moved, whether it was from Norway to Sweden or now from Hammarby to Celtic, he's looked like he belongs. That tells you a lot about his mentality and maturity. At 23, he's young, but he's not raw. He's ready. And Celtic need ready players. The club's in a phase now where rebuilding and refining have to happen at the same time. There's no luxury of waiting 6 months for someone to hit their stride. The league's tight, the expectations are sky high, and every dropped point feels like a disaster. So bringing in someone who doesn't need to be slowly eased in, who can contribute from day one, that's crucial. Tonekti's already played over 20 games this season. He's match fit, match sharp, and up for it. But managing that workload will be key. Like Anders said, there was a period at Hammarby where he'd been playing every single game, and it started to show. Fatigue crept in, performances dipped slightly. So they rested him, not for long, just enough to get his legs back. The response? Immediate. He came back flying. So for Celtic's coaching staff, it's going to be about balance. Use him smartly. Let him explode into games, but don't burn him out, especially with the busy winter period ahead. And don't forget, this isn't a one-man show. He's coming into a side that's still figuring itself out in some ways. Injuries, inconsistent form, new faces. It's been a bit of a stop-start beginning to the campaign. So having someone like Tonekti who brings energy, purpose, and something different to the attack, that could be a spark. With Hoda still out for a while, and some of the other wide options struggling to impose themselves, this could be his moment to grab a place and make it his own. The comparisons to Hoda are easy to make, but let's be clear, he's not a direct clone. Hoda had that same flair and unpredictability, yes, but Tonekti's game is perhaps even more direct. He's more likely to carry the ball through traffic than to dance around the edges. And whereas Hoda had a bit more of a goal-scoring touch, Tonekti's strength is in dragging defenders out of position and unlocking doors for others. So if the team can find the right patterns to link up with him, overlapping fullbacks, midfield runners, strikers that thrive on chaos, then we could see his value multiply. Also, let's not overlook the fact that this deal nearly didn't happen. Hammarby didn't want to sell. They were in the middle of a title race, and he was central to that push. But when Celtic came calling with the offer, and the player himself saw the opportunity, things moved fast. That shows ambition on both sides. For Tonekti, it's a step up. For Celtic, it's a sign they're not waiting around to see if a player gets hot. They're identifying talent early and going for it. And that ambition matters. Tonekti isn't shy about where he wants to go. When he moved to Hammarby, he already had eyes on the bigger European leagues. But he didn't jump straight from Norway to Belgium or the Netherlands like many do. He took what some would call a sideways step to Sweden, but used it as a springboard. That tells you he's strategic. He knew he needed the right environment to grow, to play, to shine. Now Celtic offers the next platform. European football, huge fan base, intense competition. It's the perfect test. What might surprise people is just how humble he is off the pitch. He's not the flashy, brash type you might expect from a flair player. He's down to earth, focused, and driven. But at the same time, he hasn't lost that love for the game. In interviews, he talks about wanting to entertain, wanting to bring joy to supporters. That kind of mindset, mixed with serious work ethic, is rare. He wants to be the player kids watch and dream about. That's the kind of energy Celtic Park feeds off. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Whispers are swirling through Scottish football this week, and they all seem to point in one unexpected direction: Patrick Bamford. The English striker, currently at Leeds United, has suddenly found his name linked with a move north of the border, with sources close to the Glasgow rumour mill suggesting that Celtic could be quietly positioning themselves for a sensational swoop. It is the kind of chatter that sets terraces buzzing and fills pub corners with heated debate. Could Bamford really trade Elland Road for Celtic Park? At first glance, the notion feels fanciful. Bamford has been a fixture at Leeds, a player whose clever movement and knack for goals made him central to their recent Premier League campaigns. Yet injuries and form dips have seen him slide down the pecking order, sparking speculation about his future. For Celtic, the timing might be ideal. With ambitions of making a deeper mark in European competition and needing another proven finisher to complement their current strike force, the possibility of a player like Bamford arriving feels both bold and strangely plausible. Observers note that Bamford's style, Technical, hard-working, and composed in the box, could fit neatly into Celtic's fluid attacking system. The Parkhead faithful crave a forward who not only scores but brings others into play, and the former Chelsea Academy man ticks those boxes. However, questions linger. Would the 31-year-old be tempted by the lure of Champions League nights under the lights in Glasgow, or would he see Scotland as a step away from the English spotlight? Financials also remain murky. Leeds would not release him lightly, and Celtic's board are notoriously cautious with their checkbook. For now, it is only a murmur, a whisper growing louder with each passing day. Some dismiss it as idle gossip, others insist there may be substance. But as the transfer window edges closer, the Bamford to Celtic storyline is one that refuses to fade. If there's truth behind the smoke, Parkhead could be bracing itself for one of the most intriguing signings in recent years. And until the picture clears, supporters on both sides of the border will keep talking, speculating, and dreaming, exactly the way football rumors are meant to be. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.